of crowd because I don't agree with a lot of shit, and I'm not finna sugarcoat it for a lot of motherfuckers. Black people was doing so well, man, was so good, and we feel like after the Black Wall Street that hit and the tragedy that hit in 1921 that they didn't rebuild the shit. And if you know your history, bro, they did rebuild it. Um, I seen one video today. The nigga said they built it in 3 days. They didn't build it in 3 days, but it did come back around pretty quick. Um, Depending on how you feel and how things work in 1921 to 1925. So I wanted to play this video and just show how black people, when we come together, and how we was thriving together before we did the integration, and how we like, because to me, as far as black people, bro, we love to include everybody and everything, right? And sometimes I think that backfires on us, and it has. You feel me? Like, because I feel like not everybody do the same thing for us. And a lot of people might not agree with it. I really don't give a fuck how you feel sometimes. Like, and I'm not trying to be rude. It's just everybody have their own opinion, because we all go through different situations that show us different things. Some people have never seen racism in their life. They never been through it. So how could you understand how I feel if you never been through what I've been through? So you only thing you could do is really agree to disagree and respect it. It's the disrespect that a lot of times they come and get niggas really got down in a place where it goes bad. But it's like, if you never been through what I've been through, you're not gonna see it from my point of view. But let me play this video real quick. Y'all let me know how y'all feel in the comments.
In 1921, the predominantly black neighborhood of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was victim to one of the biggest massacres on U.S. soil.
More than 1,000 African American homes and businesses were looted and burned to the ground.
And for decades, the massacre went untold.
White businessmen who ran the city realized that Tulsa had a huge PR problem, and they were determined to bury the story.
But on the heels of the reignition of the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been national attention brought to the massacre through news outlets.
In 1921, a white mob burned Greenwood to ash,
as well as pop culture. The story is now getting the attention it deserves. But the massacre is only half of that story. What happened after the massacre is just as important.
The real story here is the story of the indomitable human spirit. It's about these remarkable black people who had vision. They created something that was of national renown. They watched it destroyed unjustly. Most of them remained. They were resilient. They rebuilt, even in the face of great hostility.
In order to understand the massacre in Tulsa, you have to understand the context around it.
So the national context is something that sociologists and historians often call the low point of race relations in America, because there was a proliferation of so-called race riots. These were invasions of black communities all across the country.
1919 was dubbed Red Summer, with riots in dozens of cities around America in what was mostly white-on-black violence. Greenwood, however, dodged those riots and actually flourished because of the oil boom.
More than 10,000 people lived there. People were coming in daily to this incredible boom town, this oil city of Tulsa. Jobs were plentiful. Plenty of people had, regular steady paychecks.
It was like a main street, really. So you would have beauty salons and barbershops, laundries, grocery stores, restaurants. So this was kind of an everyman's paradise owned by black folks, concentrated in a 35 square block area that abuts downtown Tulsa.
During that era, a successful black community was met with white resentment, and Greenwood was no different.
The idea was gain economic power, gain wealth, and then you will get respect, and with respect will come political power. Well, just the opposite happened in Tulsa. If you gain economic power, you will court resentment and violence ultimately.
White Americans can get very upset and jealous when they see African Americans who have things, cars, nice homes, that they don't have. There's no question that part of that jealousy was part of the fuel for what became the Tulsa Race Massacre, but it really wasn't the spark that began it.
That spark was a black boy accidentally touching a white girl in an elevator.
Tulsa was a tinderbox or powder keg, needing only some sort of igniter or catalyst. That event involved two teenagers, Dick Rowland, 19 years old, shoeshine boy who works downtown, Sarah Page, 17 years old, white girl who operates an elevator at downtown Drexel building.
What we think happened is Dick stepped onto the elevator, he tripped, he reached his hand out, he probably grabbed Sarah Page, she screamed, and he ran out of the elevator. Meanwhile, a white clerk in a nearby store, had concluded that this had been an interracial rape attempt, and he started to spread that story.
The next morning, Dick Rowland was arrested and taken to the courthouse, and that could have been the end of things.
Had it not been for the intervention of the Tulsa Tribune, which the next day published an article entitled "Nabbed Negro for Attacking Girl in an Elevator." It was a false narrative that painted the portrait of an attempted rape in broad daylight in public space in downtown Tulsa.
After hearing rumors that Dick Rowland would be lynched, several dozen black World War I vets assembled with weapons to confront the mob.
As you might imagine, words are exchanged between the larger white group and the smaller black group. White man tries to take a black man's gun, the gun discharges. Chaos ensues. The violence lasted roughly 16 hours. Black men put up a fearless defense of the Greenwood community. But ultimately, the mob spills over into the Greenwood district, burning, looting, shooting, destroying everything in sight.
The destruction of Greenwood wasn't just bad, it was total.
It's just like a wave that goes block by block. Both movie theaters go up, the public library branch goes up, the African American hospital is burned, 22 churches are burned, grocery stores, restaurants, everything is leveled. In terms of the number of people who died, there are reasonable estimates that go as high as 300. And Greenwood is, physically speaking, is gone.
Property damage estimates range from $1.5 to $2 million, which translates to $25 million today. But this isn't where the story ends.
The fact of the matter is that Black Tulsans rebuilt Greenwood. The community rebuilt it.
And that rebuilding was an uphill battle. With no help from the federal government and the city of Tulsa actively trying to prevent the rebuilding, the Greenwood community began the long, slow reconstruction of Greenwood.
The massacre in the Black community became a point of pride. The fact is that they fought back. So this was a defiant community, it was a proud community, and they were determined to stay.
So the community, we know, was rebuilt to a significant enough degree to host this national conference of these Black business leaders in 1925. In other words, yes, you may kill us. Yes, you may burn us out, but we shall not be moved. We will persevere. We will go forward.
Greenwood did rise again from the ashes. And by the 1930s and 1940s, you can make an argument that it was even grander than it was before.
While Greenwood was able to withstand and rebuild after their neighborhood was razed to the ground, it wasn't able to withstand the second attack on the community, which was much less obvious, but no less devious. The first of those attacks, ironically, was integration.
And for many of us, that's counterintuitive because we embrace integration as a positive value. But when integration comes along, black dollars flow outside the community. Why? Because there are more goods and services available to black folks at better price points for black folks, and it undermines the financial foundation of the community.
The other factor that destroyed Greenwood for a second time: urban renewal.
Urban renewal projects often have negative effects on communities of color because those communities are often unable to stand up against urban planning done by people who don't take into consideration the thoughts and values of communities of color.
One of those projects?
An 8-lane interstate freeway was plowed right through deep Greenwood, through the heart of the community there.
It divided the community in such a way that it's virtually impossible for the community to come back cohesive whole was the location of the highway.
And Greenwood wasn't the only city destroyed by these freeways. Chicago, Detroit, Durham, the Bronx, Los Angeles all suffered similar devastating effects from freeways essentially ripping a hole directly through black communities during the 50s and 60s.
It's the old cliche, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Certainly, I hope that's changing with movements like the Black Lives Matter movement and what we're seeing today. But in the past, a lot of these communities of color just didn't have a place at the table, didn't have a voice, and didn't have the number of white allies that I hope that we have today.
All right, y'all. So I could tell you right now, the Black Lives Matter shit was a whole bunch of bullshit, bro. Majority of them, and if you don't believe me, you can look it up. I might do an episode on it or something. But the Black Lives Matter, man, that's just a whole. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's white people that actually got the trademark from it. But the people that was running this shit, they all got some fraudulent shit. Like, bro, it's just not the same mindset. Like a lot of us do have that mindset of being black owned and bringing that Black Wall Street back together. But a lot of us, man, take advantage of the situation. You can't really trust nobody. So you don't really know who's out here for the better movement of the Black Lives Matter or who's just out here for their own personal gain. So it's crazy because I want to see us do good. Like I said all the time, I want to see us do better. But man, that shit it don't hit the same no more, bro. Where the fuck did that video go? All right then, y'all. So I'm gonna show y'all a video of Maynard Jackson, the first black mayor in Atlanta. And if you have been to Atlanta before, we have an international side, a Delta International side that's named after him, and he has a high school named after him as well. I thought it was another video that I could have played.
Maynard Jackson Jr., the first African-American mayor of a major southern city.
My name is Brooke Jackson Edmond, and Maynard Jackson was my father. To most people who knew of Maynard, he was an imposing and hopefully an inspirational leader. But to me, he was just daddy, and he was a wonderful father. He made my childhood very magical, not because of the places he took me or the people he introduced me to. It was not because of his career.
I am one of Maynard's closest friends, if not his closest friend. I knew him for 60 years. And this relationship goes back to John Wesley Dobbs, who was our maternal grandfather and had 6 daughters. Maynard's mother was the oldest. My mother was the 4th oldest. And so we grew up in a very close-knit family where being a cousin was a person of high stature.
Maynard was a very unique individual. the admiration that he had for his father, for his grandfather. He knew that it was kind of a multi-generational responsibility that he bore to give back to his community.
My name is Maynard Jackson III. I'm the only son of the Honorable Maynard Jackson Jr. The first two Maynards were dynamic and revolutionary. Their desire to see equality among all people and their commitment to civic and community service is unmatched.
From John Wesley Dobbs, Maynard Jackson Sr., Maynard really bore a big burden. It was a burden of responsibility, it was a burden of giving back, it was a burden of being a leader, it was a burden of taking a lot of people on his shoulders and making life different for them.
There is no person in the last 50 years in municipal government who's had a greater impact on people of color than Maynard Jackson.
Maynard's legacy, in my opinion, is his stance on inclusion, diversity, and the economic empowerment that he brought about by mandating that all city contracts, which at that time was less than 1%, include minorities, women, and other people of different colors.
Maynard signed the first human rights ordinance, but the history of that was Maynard having to battle certain religious forces and right-wing forces in this city just to say that we're going to have a human rights day, because it was interpreted somehow an embracement of a counterculture that they did not deem appropriate.
It's a legacy of leadership, it's a legacy of doing the right thing, and it's a story that needs to be told. In a city like Atlanta, Georgia, which had always had a national reputation of being a model city, Maynard was the guy that stepped forth and said, you know, this could be done better. This will be done better. A lot of people don't get that. They don't get the personal damage he did to his own name, the ability not to make money because people didn't want to give him opportunities. Always having to be the guy pushing the envelope. Everybody else is around there trying to make money. But he was the guy that took the hits. That's the story that really needs to be told. Because if you really go out there and you put your neck out there, there's a price to pay. A lot of people he helped didn't help him back. And I'm talking about African-American business owners, right? The white community never gave him the credit for making Atlanta the model city.
And of course, the crowning glory of that was when the Atlanta airport came in ahead of time and under budget and had significant minority participation. And that really legitimized that concept, and a lot of people still use that today.
Seldom in life do leaders come along that completely change the outcome of entire cities and entire nations. Maynard Jackson was just that type of individual.
He was squeaky clean, a man of high integrity, character, and he
Being the third Maynard, I feel it's my duty to share my father's story and illuminate the things that he did. You will learn intimate details about his life, his hurts, fears, what his driving passions were, politics, and what it really took to build Atlanta.
Good afternoon. My name is Sam Pollard, and I've been asked to direct a new documentary about the life of Mayor Maynard Jackson. I was approached about doing this documentary. I was very excited about the challenge. And the reason is because when you think about the civil rights movement in America, most times people think of what happened in the 50s and early 60s with Dr. Martin Luther King and SCLC and SNCC and the March on Washington. But there's another part of the civil rights movement. What happened after the walls of segregation were starting to be broken, and there was integration. And what happened was there was a group of African-American politicians who now their job was to work within the system to make change happen. One of those men who was on the front lines was Maynard Jackson, who was the first Black mayor of a southern city, Atlanta. And so this is his story, the story of Atlanta, the story of the Black community that he grew up in, the story of the changes he made in the city of Atlanta. So I'm looking forward to making this documentary and interviewing the people who lived and knew Maynard Jackson. But anything you can do to help get this film made would greatly be appreciated. Again, I'm Sam Pollard and the producer-director of the documentary, Maynard. Thank you.
If this is not part of your philanthropic portfolio this year, you are making a huge mistake and missing a real opportunity for us to tell our story that began the last quarter of this century.
I want people to go and see this movie and come away understanding all the unique things that came together in just the right way to create a person as incredible as Maynard Jackson. And I'm biased, but I think this is all something that we should see and experience. So please Go to maynardmovie.com and support this movie today.
I would encourage everybody to give to maynardmovie.com.
I urge you to support this effort. If we don't tell our story, no one else will.
I'm Maynard Jackson III. Go to maynardmovie.com for more details.
All right, y'all. So I haven't really. I can read up on him real quick. Let's see something. Hold on. Damn, just looking at it. Might not be able to pull it up for y'all. All right, y'all. So don't worry about it. I was gonna read a few things about him, but I'm gonna go to this last video. We have Miss Bessie Coleman, American hero. I think she was the first black woman air pilot, y'all. So gotta pay due respects to that. Like I said, it is Black History Month, and I just want to speak, even if I don't agree with everybody. Everybody ain't gonna agree with certain things. I just want to give these people they just do, because a lot of times we just speak about the Malcolm X, the Martin Luther King, the Rosa Parks, Muhammad Ali, certain black people that we speak about all the time, that these people don't get to just do it that they do, that they did.
The early years of heavier-than-air aviation included famous inventors such as Wilbur and Orville Wright from Dayton, Ohio, Glenn Curtiss from Hammondsport, New York, Brazilian Roberto Santos Dumont, and Louis Blériot from France. Although they differed in their origins, temperaments, and design strategies, all of them were male and all of them were white. In 1892, however, a tiny baby was born in northeastern Texas who eventually would change the face of aviation, both figuratively and literally. On January 26th of that year, Elizabeth Bessie Coleman was born in Atlanta, Texas. Her parents, George and Susan Coleman, were African-American sharecroppers who could neither read nor write. In 1894, the Coleman family moved to Waxahachie, Texas, a town about 30 miles south of Dallas. At age 6, Bessie started attending school 4 miles from her home. In 1901, tired of the racism that faced black people in Texas, George Coleman, being part Choctaw, decided to move to Oklahoma, then called Indian Territory. Susan Coleman, however, insisted on staying in Texas with her daughters. Susan began working for a white family. When cotton harvest came around, mother and daughters augmented the family's meager income by picking cotton. In 1910, Bessie enrolled in the Agricultural and Normal University, a blacks-only school in Langston. Poverty forced her to leave after just 1 year, so she returned home and earned money by washing clothes. When Bessie turned 23, she moved to Chicago to live with 2 older brothers, Walter and John. Walter worked regularly as a Pullman porter, but John was often unemployed. While still living down in Texas, Coleman had announced to her mother that she wanted, quote, to amount to something, unquote. Now, up in Chicago, she sought a better life than that of just a maid, cook, or laundress. She attended the Burnham School of Beauty Culture and then found a job as a manicurist in a men's barber shop on Chicago's South Side. In 1917, when the United States entered World War I, Coleman's brothers went to Europe as part of Illinois' all-black 8th Army National Guard. After the war ended, the brothers returned home, and one brother started teasing Bessie about her limited circumstances, saying that French women had much better career prospects. Some French women, he added, even took to the skies as pilots. Coleman took her brother's remark as a provocation to learn to fly. but she quickly discovered that no American aviation school would train women or minorities. Undeterred by the limits placed on her sex and race, she developed a plan to make it to France and learn to fly. She took French lessons, found a better paying job, and enlisted the aid of African Americans to bring her plan to fruition. One person who helped Coleman financially was Robert Abbott, founder and owner of the Chicago Defender, one of the city's leading black newspapers. She also sought help from Jesse Binga, an ambitious real estate owner and founder of a bank that bore his name. In 1920, claiming to be 4 years younger than her actual age of 28, Coleman applied for an American passport. On November 20th of that year, she boarded the SS Imperator in New York Harbor and steamed for Europe. In northern France, Coleman found training at the Caudron Brothers Aviation School. Founded by the French airplane builders René Caudron and his brother Gaston, the aviation school was at the time the most famous one in France. Coleman's training plane was the Newport Type 82, a common trainer of the era. During her 7-month course, she learned how to make banking turns, how to recover from tailspins, and how to loop the loop. With a pilot's license dated June 15, 1921, Bessie Coleman became the first black person in the world, man or woman, to earn an international pilot's license. After finishing her course in northern France, she went to Paris for additional training. In September, she steamed for home on the SS Manchuria. When the ship arrived in New York, newspapermen, both white and black, met the ship in order to meet America's first black woman aviator. While in New York, Coleman was wined and dined by the African American community. She attended performances of a play called Shuffle Along, the first successful musical in America starring black actors. With lyrics written by pianist U.B. Blake and his friend Noble Sissel, the musical included performers such as Florence Mills and the incomparable Ethel Waters. When Coleman returned to Chicago, the Defender printed a photograph of her mother holding a silver cup that the flyer had received in New York from Shuffle Along cast members. In the 1910s and 20s, American pilots had few ways to make a living. Most commonly, they earned income by holding air shows, performing feats like parachuting, challenging race cars to high-speed dashes, or looping the loop. To succeed on the air show circuit, Coleman quickly realized that she needed more flight training. But American flying schools continued to refuse her admittance. In February of 1922, therefore, Coleman returned to New York City to prepare for a second trip to France. Once again, New York's African American community entertained the flyer. She met again with cast members of the Shuffle Along musical and addressed the 2,500-member Metropolitan Baptist Church, which gave her a standing ovation. On February 22nd, back she steamed to France, this time on the SS Paris. After 2 months of flight training in France, Coleman went to Holland, where she met the Dutch airplane designer Anthony Fokker. In late May, she went to Germany, soon borrowed a plane, and flew it over the Kaiser's Palace in Berlin. She stayed 10 weeks in that country, meeting many flyers. Among them was Robert Talon, a German aviation pioneer, one of the Wright brothers' European employees, and designer of the Albatross D-3 fighter plane of World War I. In early August, Coleman steamed for home on the SS Nordau. Newsmen once again met her ship when it docked in New York Harbor. Realizing that dramatic stories would entice air shows to hire her as an aerial performer, she claimed that she had learned to fly after serving with the Red Cross in Europe during World War I. She also claimed to have met German royalty and politicians, and that she had flown a large German seaplane. Coleman's chance to fly before the American public first came at Curtis Field in Garden City, Long Island, in early September of 1922. New York's all-black 15th Infantry paraded on the field, and the flyer herself wore a military-style outfit while flying a Curtiss JN-4. Upon landing, the flyer received a bouquet of flowers from none other than Trinidad's famed aviation pioneer and a self-promoter in his own right, Hubert Fauntleroy Julian. The September 4th issue of one of New York's papers reported that at least 1,000 spectators, mostly African American, had attended the event. In mid-October, at Checkerboard Field in Chicago, Coleman made her first flights in front of her adopted city. The airport's owner, a white flyer named David Benke, who supported her flying efforts, provided the plane for her performance. In January of 1923, Coleman boarded a train for the West Coast to meet with officers of the Coast Tire and Rubber Company in California in hopes of doing aerial advertising for the firm. After visiting the company's manufacturing plant in Oakland, she headed south to Rockwell Air Intermediate Depot in San Diego, where she acquired a Curtiss JN-4. In early February, Coleman took off from Santa Monica to fly 25 miles to a fairground celebration in Los Angeles. At 300 feet, her engine stalled and the plane then crashed. Coleman was knocked unconscious and suffered a broken leg, 3 broken ribs, several cuts, and other injuries. Rescuers took her to St. Catherine Hospital in downtown Santa Monica, where it took her 3 months to recuperate. It took over 2 more years for Coleman to return to flying. Now performing in Houston, Texas in 1925, she did motor stalls, dives, barrel rolls, figure eights, and loop-the-loops. Her performance had particular social and cultural importance because it took place on June 19th, or Juneteenth, the date on which Texas slaves first learned of their emancipation through an order read by Union General Gordon Granger. In mid-July, Coleman flew at a church event in Richmond, Texas, and then again in Houston for black employees of the Southern Pacific Railway. In early August, she flew in San Antonio, and in early September, she flew in Wharton, Texas, and performed a parachute jump. Coleman finally made her way to Waxahachie, her childhood town. As was common then, white spectators and black spectators sat in different sections. However, in Waxahachie and other venues over the years, the flyer demanded that both races enter through the same gate or else she would not fly. In January of 1926, Coleman went south again, giving aviation lectures first in Georgia and then in Florida. With a steadier income, she bought another plane, a used Curtiss JN-4, stored at Love Field in Dallas, to replace the one destroyed in her Santa Monica crash. Coleman now was in Jacksonville, Florida, so she hired a white pilot named William D. Wills to fly the plane to her. She was scheduled to perform again on May 1st at Paxson Field in Jacksonville for members of the city's Negro Welfare League. On April 30th, Wills flew over the field at 3,000 feet with Coleman as a passenger so she could determine the best landing spot for her next day's parachute jump. The plane suddenly sped up, dropped into a tailspin, and then turned over at 500 feet. With her seatbelt unbuckled to better see her landing spot, Coleman fell out of the plane and plunged to her death. Wills could not regain control of the plane, hit a tree, and crashed to his death about 300 yards from where Coleman's body lay. Although joined in their fates, Wills and Coleman were segregated after their deaths, as Coleman's body went to a blacks-only funeral home. The black-owned Chicago Defender spread news of Coleman's death across the entire front page of its paper. A white-owned Jacksonville paper posted a small news article in the upper left corner of its front page, giving Wills pride of place in the report. The African-American a royal send-off worthy of her aviation nickname, Queen Bess. Her body first lay in state at Jacksonville's Bethel Baptist Institutional Church. From there, her body went on to Orlando, Florida, where she was honored at Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church. And in Chicago, on Friday, May 7, 1926, 10,000 mourners paid their respects at Pilgrim Baptist Church. America's first black woman flyer lies buried in Lincoln Cemetery in Blue Island, Illinois. At the time of her death, Elizabeth Bessie Coleman was only 34 years old.
All right, then, y'all. That's it for my episode today, man. I hope y'all. I plan on doing this a little bit more, man, when I speak. Not just even on Black History Month, man.